You know that moment when a conversation just dies? You meet someone new, or worse, someone you kind of know, but not enough to skip the small talk. So you go through the usual starter pack. Hey, how are you? What do you do? Which team are you on? How do you know everyone here? And for a minute, things are fine. You're both being normal human adults. Congratulations. Society is functioning. Then suddenly, nothing. The conversation hits a wall. Not a dramatic wall. More like one of those invisible glass doors that birds fly into. You both stand there, smiling a little too hard, pretending the silence is totally fine. Meanwhile, your brain is flipping through every possible topic like a broken vending machine. Weather? Too boring. Work? Already did that. Ask about their weekend? What if they say, nothing much? And now you're both trapped here forever. So one of you reaches for your phone, not because there's anything important on it, but because phones are the emergency exit of awkward conversations. I know this scene too well. I've lived it at work events, weddings, birthday parties, family gatherings, and those random social situations where you're suddenly talking to someone's roommate's cousin and neither of you knows why. For a long time, I thought I was just bad at talking to people. Not shy in a cute, mysterious way. More like, please don't leave me alone near the snack table with a stranger shy. But eventually, I realized something that honestly made me feel better. I wasn't broken. I wasn't antisocial. I was just untrained. Conversation is a skill. That's it. Some people learn it early because they grew up around talkative families or naturally social friends. Some people don't. Some people learn guitar. Some learn public speaking. Some learn how to make eye contact without looking like they're trying to read someone's soul. It's all practice. And after enough awkward pauses, failed jokes, overthinking, and pretending to check imaginary messages, I found that talking to people naturally really comes down to three things. Not secret charisma. Not being born confident. Not having the personality of a podcast host who drinks cold brew at 9 p.m. Just three things you can actually practice. The first one is this: ask better questions. Not more questions. Better ones. There's a difference. Let's say someone tells you, I went golfing over the weekend. Now, if you're like old me, and you know nothing about golf except that people wear tiny gloves and get weirdly emotional about grass, you might say, oh nice. And then you both stare into the distance while the conversation slowly sinks into a swamp. But you could also ask, where do you usually play? Or, how long have you been doing that? Or, are you actually good? Or are you just out there fighting for your life like the rest of us? Suddenly, there's movement. They have something to answer. You have somewhere to go. And you don't even need to care deeply about golf. That's the beautiful part. You're not pretending golf is your new religion. You're just giving the other person room to talk about something they brought up. That's what intentional questions do. They keep the conversation alive without forcing you to perform. A lot of people panic because they think they need to have interesting stories ready at all times. Like they need to walk into every room with 5 jokes, 3 travel memories, and 1 emotionally mature insight about life. You don't. Most conversations are just a chain of small doors. Person says something. You notice one detail. You open that door. They say more. You open another one. That's it. If someone says they just moved to the city, don't just say, cool. Ask what made them move. Ask what they think of the place so far. Ask what surprised them. Ask if they found a good coffee shop yet, because honestly, that's a major life issue. The person asking thoughtful questions usually has more control over the conversation than the person trying to sound impressive. Which brings us to the second thing. Listen more than you speak. I know, it sounds too simple. It also sounds like advice from a motivational poster hanging in a dentist's office. But it's true. Most people think being good at conversation means being good at talking. Being funny, being quick, having great stories, knowing how to jump in at the right moment with something clever. And sure, that helps. But the real skill is listening, not fake listening. Fake listening is when someone is talking and your face is nodding, but your brain is backstage preparing your next line. They're telling you about their new job and you're not really hearing it because you're thinking, okay, when they stop, I'm going to mention that one thing that happened to me in 2019. Is that relevant? Kind of. Maybe. Wait, what did they just say? Then your turn comes, and you say something completely random. I have done this. Many times. Painful memories. Let's move on. Real listening means you're actually paying attention to what they're giving you. Their words, yes, but also their tone, their energy, the little details they almost skip over. Someone says, yeah, I moved here for work. It's been kind of a lot. That phrase, kind of a lot, is a door. You can ask, what's been the hardest part? Or, are you liking it here? Or still adjusting? Now the conversation becomes real, not intense, not therapy in the middle of a birthday party, just real enough that the other person feels like you heard them. And people remember that. They may not remember your perfect sentence. They may not remember your hilarious one-liner, but they remember how they felt around you. There's a quote that gets passed around a lot because it's annoyingly accurate. Most people don't listen to understand. They listen to reply. Don't be that person. The world has enough people waiting for their turn to talk. Be the person who actually hears the last sentence. That alone makes you better at conversation than most people in the room. And once you're asking better questions and actually listening, the third thing becomes much easier. Find common ground. This is where conversations stop feeling like work. The first, talking to someone new can feel like you're both carrying a couch up a narrow staircase. Awkward. Heavy. Someone's definitely pretending they know what they're doing. But once you find one shared thing, everything gets lighter. Maybe you both love the same show. Maybe you both hate the same part of your job. Maybe you both grew up in small towns. Maybe you both have a dog that acts like a tiny landlord. Maybe you both secretly think networking events are just adult group projects with snacks. It doesn't have to be deep. It just has to be shared. Common ground creates momentum. Before that, you're searching. After that, the conversation starts walking on its own. The trick is that common ground usually doesn't appear instantly. You have to listen for it. Someone mentions they're tired because they were up late. You could ask why. Maybe they have a baby. Maybe they were watching a game. Maybe they were finishing a book. Maybe their upstairs neighbor owns tap shoes and no conscience. Any of those can become a connection point. The goal is not to force similarity. Don't pretend to love something you don't. People can usually sense that, and then, suddenly, you're stuck in a conversation about rock climbing gear when you have never climbed anything except your own anxiety. Just look for the honest overlap. And when you find it, stay there for a bit. That's where conversation becomes easy. Now, let's be honest. Even if you do all of this, not every conversation is going to become magical. Some people give one-word answers like they're paying per syllable. Some conversations just don't click. Sometimes the vibe is off. Sometimes they're tired. Sometimes you're tired. Sometimes both of you are standing there with paper plates full of snacks, doing your best in a weirdly loud room. That's fine. Pause does not mean you failed. Silence is not an emergency. It's just space. The more comfortable you get with small silences, the less desperate you become to fill them. And weirdly, that makes you better to talk to. People can feel when you're relaxed. They can also feel when your soul leaves your body because 3 seconds passed without words. So breathe. Smile. Let the silence exist for a second. Then ask something real, or comment on something nearby, or let the conversation end naturally. Not every interaction needs to become a lifelong friendship. Sometimes a decent 2-minute chat is a win. The truth is, good conversation is not about being the most interesting person in the room. That's exhausting anyway. It's about being curious. It's about being present. It's about noticing what someone gives you and caring enough to follow it. Ask questions that have somewhere to go. Listen like you're not just waiting for your turn. Find the little bridge between their world and yours. Do that, and you won't need to panic about running out of things to say. Because the conversation will start giving you things to say. And over time, you'll realize the real goal was never to sound interesting. It was to become genuinely interested.